Hello guys and welcome back to this new episode. Today we are going to talk about geniuses. This is exactly the reason why I like so much ancient times. One can pick the body, remove the brain, dissect it, and leave the body to be cremated. Unbelievable. Okay, let's start. Come on. In this episode, we are going to talk about geniuses. So here we are going to explore some characteristics of geniuses. First of all, we'll start with the story. The story about Albert Einstein. His body was cremated. However, Harvey picked the brain. Just I don't know how you do that. Like the bureaucratic implications. Don't you go to jail for doing something like that? I don't know. Anyway, Harvey picked the brain, dissected the brain to explore what was like Einstein's brain. What is it that he found out? He found out a couple of things. Number one, that his brain had more than average glial cells. Right? Those are more cells to support communication between neurons. And number two, that the parietal lobes were enlarged. There should be nothing surprised about that. Meaning, in other words, that if you are practicing a lot with imagination, like Einstein would do, of course, to imagine what was gravity, how to properly interpret gravity, and how to make sense of the laws of micro dynamics, micro reality, and dynamics at a microscopic level, then you should have, or your lobes will become enlarged. They were like 15% larger than average. So that is what he found out. So there's no specific anatomic component of you being a genius, right? That was specific to Einstein. So that's a positive news. But we do know that when it comes to intelligence, that is very controversial. Very controversial, and we do have another video on intelligence. Intelligence in Ashkenazic Jews, but that's a different story. Intelligence. So the first test to measure intelligence was created by French people, specifically Alfred Binet. And we are at the very beginning of the 20th century. I believe it was 1905. And what happened was, that was, the test, along with many other people, emigrated to the United States. And there became something completely different. Completely different. Why? Because basically they used it to sterilize people. To say, let's make a better race. Does that remind you of anybody in Europe? Okay, so Alfred Binet conceived this test in order to help more disadvantaged children, right, to perform better. And what it ended up to be was, of course, something completely different, like in any good history of eugenetics. Anyway, point number 3. Point number 3 is a sub-point of point number 2. Let's specify it as nowadays the definition of intelligence is very controversial. Intelligence can be defined from a social perspective. Intelligence can be defined as an emotional intelligence, as a practical intelligence. So we have many parameters, right? And the fact that you are classified as intelligent doesn't mean too much, right? It means average. Most people are intelligent because most people, thank God, nowadays are very able to have had a decent childhood. They were kind of like well fed, well nourished, well taken care of, right? Now, you could argue with that. I would argue also with that statistics, but that's pretty much somewhat how intelligence has been restricted to due to the lack of universality in understanding who intelligent is and what intelligence also is. Okay, let's go to proper point number 3. William Shockley. he was excluded from a study on geniuses, but he managed to win the Nobel Prize for the invention of the transistors. So, if you guys are despairing because if you guys are in despair because you're not geniuses, do not worry, okay? Anybody with, I would say, good luck, first of all, hard work, and again, some more good luck can manage, right? And I'm not so much a believer in good luck, but it is important, you know? Your initial conditions sometimes determine who you're going to be. But that's my opinion, you know? But study a lot, work hard on whatever it is that you want, because it is important to believe to be the locus, the focal point of control, right? Without that, it's very difficult to navigate in life. We would probably end up feeling, you know, without hope and without things being in our hands, which on the other hand though is very positive, because at that point you can kind of relax some more. Anyway, I'm very debated on that, and let's move on because that's outside the scope of this video. Okay, so point number 4. Point number 4 is Asperger. Hans Asperger was a Swiss. By the way, have you guys noticed how many psychologists are Swiss? And I didn't think about it, but now I have Rorschach, Hans Asperger, someone else that I've encountered. There must be a good tradition in Switzerland of psychology and psychologists. At least there was, because these people are all from the 20th century. Anyway, Hans Asperger, Swiss psychologist. He is the guy that named Asperger's syndrome. It's a form of highly functional autism, right? So autism, and I do not mean to give a very specific definition, but autism is the inability to focus on a larger picture and the ability to really focus and narrow down to details. It's the lack of a central narrative and the focus on details, right? And Asperger is a highly functional form of autism where you are more detached from your feelings and you live more on an intellectual plane, right? Now that comes with a deficiency in properly integrating feelings. It's not necessarily a trait, but it doesn't mean that you are a genius, but you can be very highly functioning, and the ability to detach some more from your feelings can also help you achieve some intellectual goals and pursuits. Point number 5. Who told you that to be a genius you cannot be athletic? Well, it's completely wrong. There's a guy that is the proof of this. Now, I don't know his name, so I'm gonna just read it, okay? I'm sure you do not. He interpreted the starred as even the third, and his name is Dolph Lundgren, I think, and his QI is 160. He was accepted to MIT, one of the most prestigious universities on earth, and speaks 7 languages, so not bad. Okay, point number 6. There are different types of geniuses. So one defined as gregarious, and basically they are brutally honest. One defined as isolated. This is typical of the Silicon Valley geniuses in IT. And one unpredictable. This is more the artist way. You have a really bad temper, a really bad form of communication with other people, really kind of like bad personality, but you're a genius. Okay, so point number 8. Edison had more than 1,093 patents, right? So we can classify Edison not just as the man with the most patents on earth, I think is the one, but also as a genius, right? It's his ability to invent, to create is quite remarkable, right? And we have kind of lost that. I think in some countries there's too much indoctrination for us to be creative as much as we want, right? Nowadays creativity has different forms, I would say. Okay, number 9. Number 9, I think. Number 9 is the rhythms. The rhythms and the pace at which geniuses lead their lives. Basically, if you are not a early bird, if you don't wake up too early in the morning and you do go to bed very late at night, and you have that tendency, and you have irregular sleep patterns, please be aware that that's very not healthy at all, I would say, for your heart, and you are more subjected to stroke. Just be aware of that. But also be aware that that is the typical routine of geniuses, right? They have very irregular sleep patterns. Sometimes they sleep very little, and that's also not very beneficial if you want to be extremely high functioning. Okay, point number 10. Point number 10 is the characteristics that somebody has compiled that geniuses have in common. Courage, enthusiasm, perfectionism, curiosity, and sense of humor. But most of all, number 11, because this is the piece of information we want to leave you with, is concerning sex. Okay, so in the most prestigious universities, it has been found out that the people that perform very well and have high scores, high marks, are people who are virgins. Specifically, that percentage has gone up to 45%. And what that tells us is not that geniuses are necessarily so, late bloomers or they develop later. It's just that basically when you are in a university where a lot is required by you, you don't really have the time, to do anything else. And so your social life, and with that your life as an adult, gets sacrificed in order to accomplish certain results, right? With that comes a lot, some universities report alarming statistics like 75% of people getting anorexia or bulimia because they are unable to put up with that sort of stress and with that daily regime of your studies, right? And it doesn't matter, it doesn't mean that you're stupid or that you cannot put up with this. It's the kind of pressure that is put on students that kind of twists their lives a little bit, and so those are things to be taken into consideration. I do believe that education is important. I do believe that one has to study and work hard. I don't necessarily believe that you need to get to that point, though. Okay, I don't think that that's healthy. I don't think that is the measure of anything. People that want to be highly functional in that condition sometimes cheat, find shortcuts to, being able to cope with that, and that translates in lack of knowledge rather than more knowledge, right? So one has to weight properly all the components, but that's just my opinion. But with that being said, guys, I want to hear your opinion, so let me know, comment below, and we'll talk sometimes, and we'll talk next time in a new different episode. In the meantime, if you have enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it. If you want, you can subscribe and hit the notification bell, and of course comment below. We'll talk next time. Bye!